Well, hello, everybody, and welcome to the Grove. My name is Bernard Alvarez, and I am going to be speaking to you about personal boundaries, how to create them, what they are. It's been something I've had to learn very recently. Well, recently, meaning in the last several years, after a whole lifetime of doing what I can to please others and putting others in before my own personal needs, or believing that I had to. And that therein lies the problem. We're going to get into all the details of all of that in just a few moments. But as usual, I like to start our show with just a reading from the Book of One. Let's see if I've got the little thing here I can pull up. Yes. So today I picked dealing with personal boundaries. I feel that one of the main aspects of personal boundaries is to be able to forgive other people as well as forgiving yourself. So I chose chapter 26 or reading 26, and it is called Forgiveness. Forgive the world for not seeing truth, and you will forgive yourself for the anger that you hold. Forgive yourself, release anger, achieve peace. In this manner, you will achieve oneness with all there is. In doing so, you manifest love for all peoples and things, good or bad, ugly or beautiful, intelligent or ignorant. Acknowledge and become aware, and you will be ever closer to your divinity. I really like that one. So let's hide this thing. Alrighty, guys. So let me go ahead and turn the chat on so I can see y'all. Let me say hello. I see we got some people joining from YouTube already. Hi, Vivian, Lubaka, and Lightworker Laura are on YouTube. So glad to have you. Thank you for being here. So, as I said earlier, this particular discussion, this topic discussion that we're having today, is going to be more based on my own personal experiences and what I've learned over the last several years. I do have some notes here from, I believe it might be psychtalk.com. I'll share that with you in just a minute. But as I said earlier, after my spiritual awakening, when I did my shamanic vision quest back in, 92, 91, 92, I, prior to that, if you read my book, in the beginning, you get a lot of preface to what led to the shamanic vision quest and how it really changed my life and I've been living a very different life ever since then. But one of the main things that I realized during my vision quest was what, for lack of a better term, and I say this in jest, what a douchebag I was prior to that. I really did not know much about spirituality. I grew up in Miami. I grew up in the whole South Beach party scene. So my world was very different to the world that I live in now. My being was very different to the being that I live in now. And once I had that awakening, that shamanic vision quest awakening, I dedicated my life to service to others. In doing that, I stepped back from putting me as number one. I felt that it wasn't that I felt that I didn't deserve it, but I felt that one, at that time, I was afraid of slipping back into the old mentality of I come first, me. What do I get out of it? That kind of, the mentality that most of the world lives in, unfortunately. And we have to be aware of that, which is why I read that passage. We have to forgive the world for being the world and people being who they are. But in doing so, I strived, I obsessed, I did everything I could not necessarily to be a people pleaser, but to be of service to others. And it got to the point where it caused a lot of havoc in my life. I was not taking care of myself financially. I was not taking care of myself physically. I had a I have a very full plate now, but my plate was running over and was causing a lot of anxiety. So I really wasn't even taking care of my mental health at that point. Over the years, that became a habit. While I started gaining resentment over what I felt was being taken advantage of, I didn't do anything about it. There were times in my life where perhaps I felt that a family member or a group of friends or whatever, it might be an organization I was working with, whatever the case, that I felt that they were taking advantage of my generous nature. And instead of communicating my needs or what I felt needed to change in that particular scenario, I would just cut them off. I was just like, all right, these people, I'm not going to be taken advantage of anymore. These people don't deserve me. I'm too good for them. That too good to them. And over the years, that had been pretty much my modus operandi until maybe like 10 years ago, maybe a little more, maybe a little less. And I felt that that was me protecting my spirit, that was me protecting Bernard. Over the years, as you know, last year, or was it last year already? Geez, last year or the year before, I learned that my best friend and housemate had started abusing drugs, and I was so worried about doing anything to trigger a relapse, them to use me as an excuse to have a relapse, like that I would like walk around on eggshells. I was afraid to confront them. They had told me they don't like confrontation. And I was like, oh, that's a trigger for their relapse, or, making excuses and what we call in recovery, enabling bad behavior, basically. But I didn't see it as that. During that time, I thought I was protecting my friend. I thought I was protecting myself, and I was protecting the peace of our home. But boy, was I wrong. Since then, of course, you all know that I've been a member of Al-Anon for over a year now, and I have learned quite a bit. And I've got to say that, while boundaries have, as I've been learning to apply healthy boundaries and healthy friendships, healthy relationships with the people I work with, the people I socialize with, it has been a struggle, and it always will be a struggle. Life is a struggle. There's nothing we can do about that. The only thing that we can do is practice, and by practicing, it gets a little bit easier. So let's talk about what boundaries are. And here I'm going to look at some of the notes that I have written down. And I believe this is from psychtalk.com if you want to look it up. So boundaries, I'm just going to read what I have here. Boundaries come in many forms. They can range from being very rigid and strict, appearing almost non-existent. For example, me being rigid and strict was me saying, I don't want to work with these people anymore. I'm done. It's over. To being almost non-existent of letting people impose their troubles, their life, their opinions on you, et cetera, et cetera. If you have more rigid boundaries, you might keep others at a distance. Guilty. Seem detached even with intimate partners. Guilty. Have few close relationships. Guilty. Avoid close relationships. Guilty. So these are for rigid boundaries. This is something that we may want to consider as we look at our behavior and begin to implement a healthy form of boundaries. If you have more loose or open boundaries, you might get too involved with other people's problems. Guilty. God, I had both, didn't I? Find it difficult to say no to others' requests. I'll just say guilty to all of them as we move through the notes. Overshare personal information with others. Seek to please others for fear of rejection. A person with healthy boundaries understands that making their expectations clear helps in two ways. It establishes what behavior you will accept from other people, and it establishes what behavior other people can expect from you. If you have healthy boundaries, you might share personal information appropriately, not too much or not too little. You'll understand your personal needs and wants and know how to communicate them. You'll value your own opinion and you will accept when others say no. And I think that is probably where I'd like to start off this particular discussion, is that boundaries go both ways. In order for us to maintain healthy boundaries, I'm going to change this a little bit because it seems like it's low. There we go. In order for us to be able, I found in my experience, in order for us to maintain healthy boundaries, we do have to be a little bit flexible. There are times where your personal boundaries may not fit in the situation that with the situation you're dealing with a particular friend, business, whatever it might be. So you might need to be a little flexible. For example, let's say I'm going to go speak at a conference and I have to wear a suit. I don't like wearing suits. I don't wear suits. But you know what? Their boundary is that I need to wear a suit. So I'm going to be a little more flexible with mine and put on a suit so I can partake of the particular conference or whatever. As well, it's important that we believe in our boundaries. There's been one boundary that I've basically kept to most of my life. That has been the only one that I've kept since I have begun to reestablish new boundaries and new ways of living and interacting with other people. And that's a financial boundary. And there are boundaries for finances, there are boundaries for family, there are boundaries for how you interact at work, how you interact with your friends. But and don't forget intimate relationships. We all have boundaries there, I hope. But the one that I kept was, I have a financial boundary about lending money, and I do not lend money to people. I would rather just give them the money, and that way there are no expectations. But if I don't have the money to give them, I'll be like, listen, I don't lend money, but if I had the money, I would just give it to you. And sometimes just $20, and that's fine. Here, just take $20. I'm not going to make myself crazy worrying about when you're going to pay me back that $20. And I've seen people go nuts and become obsessive, which is probably why I don't do it, over something as little as a $20 loan. So you have to see what works for you. That one works for me. And with that being said, going back into believing the boundary and having the confidence and the self-esteem to support the boundary is very important. I don't have a problem saying no. One of my favorite, and I put this in the description, one of my favorite Al-Anon sayings is that no is a complete sentence. You don't need to make excuses. People do not need to know why you're saying no. I find that in the past, I used to feel like I had to justify my decisions to people. When I would say, no, I'm not going to lend you money. And well, why? And I would tell them, well, I've had bad experiences with that. I'd rather just give you $20 if I had it. And I would try to, my camera keeps sliding. I don't know what's going on here. I'm like moving around here. I think it's stuck on something. Sorry about that. I'm like zooming around here. There we go. I would feel like I needed to justify my stance. This is not a debate. Boundaries are not about debates. Boundaries are establishing where you end and they begin, or where they end and where you begin. And we don't do this I don't believe personal boundaries are about being mean. I don't believe it's about pushing other people away. I have learned, and I've said this in the description, I have learned the hard way that boundaries are about self care. Self care must be a priority in all of our lives, especially those of us who consider ourselves walking a spiritual path. Why are you on a spiritual path if it is not to evolve your consciousness, to elevate your consciousness, to ascend, to achieve nirvana, connect with your higher self? And in order for us to do that, we must have self-care. We must care for our own being, because while it is nice to be cared for by other people, in the end, we are the ones that must take care of ourselves. We must take responsibility for our actions and for what happens to us. So saying no is a complete sentence. There is no reason. You don't have to be nasty about it. Just say no. No, thank you. I learned this. I'll give you an example of where I was 2 years ago. And I brought up that I learned no is a complete sentence, that phrase, over at Al-Anon. I've only been with them for a year or so. But I did learn a couple years ago that I was always being invited to conferences. I was always being invited to social gatherings. I was, constantly all these wonderful invitations. And I felt that I needed to go in order to not offend the host, not offend the person who inquired. Again, I was worrying about what other people felt about me instead of telling myself. And I will say, on a footnote, the pandemic really helped with that, because there were no invitations and I got to think about things a little better. But I learned that it's okay to say no to an invitation. On a weeknight, I usually will have worked 8 to 10 hours, and I'm not going to want to go out for a drink. I'm not going to want to go to a movie. I'm not going to want to go to another political action forum or something like that, or a board meeting, or whatever it is that I'm being invited to. I'm spent. And it's okay for me to acknowledge that. I like the way that we say, we're out of bandwidth. I don't have the bandwidth for it. And that's okay. That's okay. You don't need to be rude about it. Usually I will turn down an invitation by saying, no, thank you. I just don't think I have the bandwidth for it tonight. Or, to be honest, instead of, for example, in the past, people would invite me and I'd say, oh, yeah, that sounds great. And 2 days later, I think about it and I'm like, you know what? That's on a Saturday. I've got to work that Saturday for 10 hours. And I know it's Saturday night. I want to have fun, but I may not feel up to it. So now what I've learned to do is I'll say, thank you. You know what? I don't know if I can make it, but check with me the day before and I'll let you know for sure. Unless it's like a wedding with an RSVP for dinner or something like that, where I have to be there, or, you bought expensive concert tickets. Of course, you're dedicated to doing that. But if it's an out of the blue type invitation, I've learned, I'll have to see how I'm feeling, quite honestly. I may not be up to it that day. As well, I forgot who it was. What's her name? Brene Brown, or whatever her name is, that does all the TED Talks, that everybody's just in love with her right now. And I like that she says, I read a quote by her on boundaries as I was researching this discussion. And she said, boundaries are make for healthy relationships. I'm just paraphrasing. I'm probably going to get it wrong. It's like, she said, you're doing both of you a favor. It's good relationship. I'm paraphrasing. Look it up what she said. It's a great way of looking at it, because you're doing your friend a favor. You're doing your mother-in-law a favor. You're doing your child a favor by letting them know what a boundary is. Now, again, boundaries do not have to be rigid. And I think the most important part about boundaries is that once we establish them, we have to stick to them. One of the things I've learned, it was very interesting when it came to dealing with my addict best friend, my Al-Anon sponsor, yeah, we have sponsors in Al-Anon also, had said to me, "Oh, but did you threaten him? Did you threaten him?" I'm like, "What do you mean?" She's like, "Why are you threatening him to throw him out?" Or she's like, "Listen, never." She didn't say it like that. She's much calmer than me. She's very mellow. She's like, whenever you make a threat, you have to make sure you follow through. And not just in that instance, but it kind of like it hit me that when you make a statement, you have to follow through. Um, there's actually oh, darn, I should have picked that up. There's a reading in my book on the Book of One that talks about following through on what you say you're going to do. I always say that integrity is following through on what you say you're going to do. Don't say you're going to do something and not do it. Can't do it, then say something. Um, but when it comes to boundaries, we have to follow through. We have to acknowledge that, I've set a boundary. Let's say, for example, I'm presently looking for a new housemate. I have clear set household, house rules, how the relationship is, how the finances work, and we have to agree to them mutually. I present a template to the so-called roommate to be, whoever that might be, in the next several weeks that I'm going to start looking, and we will either agree or disagree on what the agreement is going to be, but at least we're establishing boundaries of what's expected of one another. There is nothing wrong with that. The same thing can be said for how we react when someone crosses our boundary. Many of us in today's world are really stressed out. We are. Between the pandemic, between finances, between wars, and whatever's going on in the world, and all the nastiness that happens within the world around us, it can get to us and it can be stressful. Not to mention the stress that we deal with in our day-to-day life. However, when someone steps on your toes or crosses the line in your boundary, it's important that we are diplomatic when we respond. Don't react. One of the things I've had to learn, and I do this with life in general, is that when I'm feeling offended or slighted or something like that, I'll just shut down for a while. It might be a couple minutes, couple of hours, and I will just meditate and ask the universe to give me clarity and discernment on the situation and what's the best way to handle it moving forward. In the past, let's say in my late 20s, early 30s, when someone had crossed a boundary, I would snap at them. I'd be like, "What do you think you're doing? I told you that I don't want you to do." That's not maintaining a healthy boundary. That's I don't know what you want to call that, but it's not very diplomatic. It's important. It's important, if the boundary is going to be healthy, that we respond in a healthy manner when that boundary has been crossed. It doesn't mean they're right. It doesn't mean they're wrong. Acknowledge the boundary has been crossed, but do so in a diplomatic way. In other words, let's say, I'm going to use roommate because since I'm looking for one, that's going to be what's on my mind. So let's say I have a thing about my olive oil butter spread. Okay. It's a simple thing. I love my olive oil butter spread. Just, I use it on my toast every morning. I'm like, don't mess with my olive oil butter spread. And and again, this hasn't happened necessarily. I'm just saying when someone takes it, I'll be like, hey, you remember I asked you not to do that? Can you please not do that? Now, granted, if they're going to do it over and over again, my responses will become more firm. And, if I lose my temper, then we're done, because I don't lose my temper very often. And for me to lose my temper, that means that we're not doing too good here. It takes a lot for me to lose my temper nowadays. Back then, though, I lost it all the time, and that just wasn't a way to be. So please respond with respect if you want to be treated with respect. As well, your boundaries also can interfere in another person's boundaries. What might be good for you may not be good for the other person. So respect their boundaries as well. Personal boundaries are essential. I believe they're essential to living in a civilized society, quite honestly. As well, some things to look out for in certain families. Certain families have zero boundaries. So if you are marrying into or are part of a family that has zero boundaries, be prepared and contemplate the best way you're going to handle that. And also, there are cultural differences that we have to be aware of. Certain cultures are very, very no boundary. I come from one. Well, I was raised in one. My Cuban family in Miami had zero boundaries. They talked about everything and said everything. And there was, the whole family knew everything. I always laugh at every time I see my big fat Greek wedding. I'm like, that was my big fat Cuban family. But so culturally there will be differences. However, it doesn't mean you cannot carve out boundaries within those particular settings. If people are uncomfortable, or wait, are, how shall we say, disrespectful of what your comfort level is, it will be up to you to step back a little bit. It's not up to them to say, I'm so sorry, I step. If they constantly are overstepping that line or constantly overstepping where you are comfortable, that's up to you to how you're going to react to that or proact preferably. Um, and remember, our boundaries will change, as we get older, as we get more comfortable or less comfortable with certain things. For example, when I was younger, I was not a hugger. I'm like, please don't hug me. I don't know you. You know, now I'm like, I would hug the waiter or the waitress at a restaurant if I could. I'm very comfortable with hugging. But when I was uncomfortable with hugging, I didn't want people to hug me or touch me. I have friends. I'm a hugger. My friends are like, oh, no, no, no. And I'm like, okay, okay, you're not a hugger. Shake my hand. So it's about being flexible but firm, if that makes sense. So I can't help but wonder what some of the boundaries that you feel that you're lacking in your life. Please, by all means, leave a comment. Let me know how this discussion has hopefully given you a little bit of inspiration to take action, to know that you deserve boundaries, to know that you can do it diplomatically, and to know that you can be flexible when it is called for. Boundaries are a good thing. It really is. And I'll share this last thing with you because it's actually what motivated me to do today's talk. I have a neighbor that lives close by, and they were one of these neighbors that they are one of these neighbors that was like just constantly texting me and what do you think about this and wanted to have like this full on conversation, text conversation. And if anybody knows me, I'm not, well, anyone who really knows me knows I don't have notifications on my phone. I don't turn them on. I would never get a moment's clarity. I have between my texts, my business, this stuff, social media. My phone would be ding, 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 ding all the time. So my notifications are turned off. I get to my texts when I get to them. I get to my email when I get to them, and I get to replying to comments at my leisure because I I'm I'm a busy person. What can I say? And I need my peace, and I need to have my meditation time and my downtime and my self-care time. But needless, I have this neighbor that likes to text a lot, and or just comes over and knocks on the door all the time. I used to have a one of my boundaries. I used to have a uh, welcome mat that said, if you have not called and we're not expecting you, we're not going to answer the door. And, and finally it was because sometimes I'm doing a show, sometimes I'm working with a client online, sometimes I'm in a meeting online. So I was like, please let me know if you're coming over. Don't disturb my what I'm doing at the moment. I ended up just getting a thing that says in session and has that little quiet please, I'm in session. But anyway, this person just did not respect that. They were knocking on my door at all hours of the day and night. They were texting me at all hours of the day and night. And they would get offended when I did not respond immediately and would start writing me back and bitching me out, telling me, "Well, you're very rude for not texting me. How you're very disrespectful. Here I am trying to care about you. I'm trying to ask you if you want some, I don't know, homemade apple pie or whatever it is." And don't get me wrong, I love home cooked things from the neighbors. But this person took it very personally that I wasn't responding to them and then started attacking me. And so I've kind of created some distance between us. I've blocked their texts because they were being very, very disrespectful and saying some really raunchy things that I would never speak aloud on my thing. And and I believe the thing that did it was that they were knocking on my door one night, and I think I was in the kitchen doing dishes or something like that, and I didn't hear the door. I have a doorbell. You think they rang the doorbell? It goes to my phone. I would have heard it, but I didn't hear the door. And the next day, I saw them outside. I was like, "Oh, hey, how you doing today? I saw you in there. I heard your TV. You are so rude. I'm knocking on your door, and you don't even bother to answer the door." I'm like, "When was this? 7 o'clock? I was making dinner and doing dishes. I may not have heard it." And they said something of the effect, "Well, you should answer your text." I said, "You know what? I get to my text when I get to my text. I will answer my door if I feel like answering my door." "Well, that's not very nice." I said, "You know what? It's called boundaries, and if you don't like it, we do not need to be friends." And I hope that I'm sure our friendship will be fine, but I think it kind of like took her for a loop, like, "Oh my goodness, Bernard's really sticking to this boundary thing." And again, it's about respecting your time. It's about respecting what you have available to offer people. I love that meme that says, what is it, that an empty cup, uh, you cannot pour from an empty cup, So we've only got so much focus. We only got so much attention. We've only got so much energy that we can give out throughout our day. And for someone like me, I have to be very regimented and focused on what I'm focusing on, and not be, reacting to every notification or whatever. But respecting ourselves is the bottom line. So respect yourself, create your boundaries, and oh, let me say hi to a few of you. And that's it for that talk. I saw more people online. I want to say hello to the few people that popped up, few more people that popped up on chat. I see Jeff is on YouTube. Hi, Jeff. I want to say hi to E. Lewis on, oh, I guess that's Liz. Hi, Liz. We see T6ATL is on YouTube. Hello. Hello, Angel on YouTube. I am glad you caught it. That's wonderful. And I see Hope is rising on Facebook. Hello, Hope. Hello, everybody. Thank you all for being here. Thank you so much for joining me, listening to my discussion on personal boundaries. Know that you're worth it. Know that you're worth it. Do it nicely, do it diplomatically, but know that you deserve it. And remember that no is a full sentence, and you do not need to justify your answer. It's okay. You're allowed to do it. Exactly. You can't give what you don't have, Ali on Facebook said. That's excellent. Excellent. All right, everybody. Well, that's it for this week. I will see you all next week. I'm not sure what we're going to be doing. When I look at the date, it's the 25th. Huh. I wonder if we're going to do Beltane. Oh, no, we'll do Beltane on the 2nd. Okay. We're doing Beltane on the 2nd. So get ready for that. I'm looking forward to that. I love you all. Have a wonderful, wonderful week. And please remember, if you love my content and you want to help me cover the cost of all these programs and technological gadgets I need to have and maintain, please consider becoming a supporter on Patreon, on Facebook, or on YouTube. You can just tip me on PayPal if you look in the description, or you can become a monthly supporter. I love you all very, very much, and I'll see you next time. Bye bye.